And hi, and welcome everybody to TTours. Today I'm gonna be going over some TF2 observer stuff to help some gamers out and figure out how to do, how to do the in-game camera work in TF2. For those of you who aren't familiar with who I am Connie. I also go by Console. Uh, I have been an observer with TFTV since 2017. I have also worked with Essentials TF and Capping TV. I am the current head broadcast organizer for TFTV, so I schedule all of our casts. I am the director producer for RGB LAN. I worked on iSeries doing in-game directing, which is actually doing the directing of the observing and also doing some vision mixing. So I also have experience in other games doing production. I just wanted to give people a context of my experience doing broadcast and observing in TF2. I know I haven't been as active in the last year or two, so maybe not as familiar. So getting that out of the way, the first question we really need to ask ourselves is, what do you even really need to like do this stuff in TF2? So, the first thing that you're gonna need, no matter what, if you want to be an observer producer in TF2, is basically just the internet capable of handling basically the hardware and internet required. So being able to stream at 720p 60 is the standard that most TF2 streams go by, at max Twitch bitrate, which is 6K bitrate. The reason a lot of times that you'll see TF2 streams commonly at 720p 60 instead of like 1080p 60 is simply just because it's a game with a lot of movement, so a lot of times that extra bitrate at a lower resolution will help out with making things look a little less blurry. In terms of the other tools we're going to use, CastingEssentials Red. I forgot I just have it linked as a download instead of going to the page. Well, drop that in chat. So that is basically the tool that makes a lot of the magic happen in TF2. If you're not familiar, the default spectating tools in TF2 are non-existent. You can simply click left to right, player to player, or you can swap the numbers 1 through 0 will swap to different players depending, I believe, on their order in the scoreboard, which is rather arbitrary, so you can't really pick players based on, class or anything like that. CastingEssentials also fixes a lot of bugs involved in spectating, especially when it comes to the HUD, and it also allows us to do fancy stuff with our HUD. And of course, I keep on mentioning a HUD. You're going to need a better HUD. The default HUD leaves a lot to be desired, and casting HUDs allow you to do cool things like separating the Uber bar. You can do stuff like showing team scores in the HUD. Insane stuff. Wait. What is... I'm confused at which part I mentioned. I'm confused. Regardless. So yeah, the other thing you're gonna need... Oh, this is the one thing I did forget to do. Well, so to go along with CE, you're going to need a config. I have prepared a couple of demonstration configs that anybody should be able to use and do some observing work with. Let's just actually copy those over. Oh yeah, I don't have an alias config, but we don't need one for what we're doing. But yeah, configs are going to be required. Obviously, if you're doing observing, one of the things you're going to need is either an STV demo, or more likely the STV server connect. This can usually be gotten by simply messaging team leaders. If you plan on casting RGL matches in particular, it's important that you let teams know that you're casting them, because, yeah, they're different rules, I suppose. And then optionally, we're going to talk about 4plug and HLAE. HLAE, I'm going to very briefly brush over, but it's essentially another spectating tool like CastingEssentials, but it provides different tools than CE. HLAE is more often used in Counter-Strike, but it can be used in TF2, specifically with the purposes of doing things like camera paths and doing extra fancy camera smooths. I do actually have a tutorial on that on my YouTube I will bring up real quick. So if you do have interest in messing around with HLAE, you can check that out. And then 4plug is this bad boy right here. It is basically a plugin utility for TF2. You can manage plugins, hit sounds, HUD, and basically this is what it looks like. So you can see I have all of my HUDs in here. It'll automatically swap between HUDs, so it'll automatically uninstall whatever HUD you previously had in, and it'll throw in a new HUD. So for the purposes of today's workshop, we're going to be using Essentials HUD. It is very importantly a free-to-use casting HUD, which most casting HUDs you will find are proprietary. They're by casting org, so TF2B has their own HUD, TF Live have their own HUD, Capping TV use their own HUD, I think I already mentioned TF2B, RGL, all the different broadcast orgs will tend to use their own set of graphics and for their own HUD. So this makes it really easy to manage, as well as just, your normal HUDs. And then obviously down here in the add-ons you can swap out. These are plugins we've used in the past on broadcast, like VTFs to swap out the billboards for different logos in game. Obviously we're going to use CastingEssentials Red, but past versions of CastingEssentials. Basically, this program is nutty and makes your life 10 times easier when you are doing observing work and are working with a lot of plugins and managing HUDs. Now, continue getting set up. Once you're going to want to have CastingEssentials installed and your HUD installed. 4plug, you simply click and it'll bring that stuff in. Obviously, you still have to move things into your custom folder initially, otherwise it'll be moved to your custom underscore folder. If you are not using 4plug, which again I highly recommend, you can just separately create a custom underscore folder to move HUDs in and out of very quickly, and you will just be dropping CastingEssentials and your HUD into your custom folder. But also, talking about launch options, So the plugins that we're using are going to require us to launch in insecure mode. Basically what that means is we're not going to be able to actually get into game without, like, we can't join a VAC secure server. We can only join VAC insecure servers, as well as things like source television relays. No border windowed basically just sets us to window borderless mode. That is really nice if you have to tab back in and out constantly, which you will be doing quite a bit of usually when you're observing, especially if you are online, as you will also be running the production. Width and height, I did not fill these in only specifically because people run at different resolutions. Personally, I run 1440p, so 2560, height 1440. But if you're running 1080, obviously width 1920, height 1080, match that to whatever resolution you're rocking. No vids and console are simply, preference. I don't like to watch the Valve head guy, and I like to have the dev console open. It's actually nice to have this, just because when CastingEssentials launches, it'll basically give you a bunch of green text in the console that'll say, hey, I launched properly, or it'll give you a bunch of errors that say, no, I didn't load properly. So it can be nice to have console, just so you can actually, be able to tell, yeah. We're going to go ahead and throw our launch options in here. And let's hop into game, I suppose. So obviously TF2 is going to take, launch options not save, question mark. Oh, no, I just don't know how to type. Go figure, lol. So yeah, as you can see, we launched up, and immediately in the console we can see CastingEssentials loaded pretty correctly. Thank you, Antlers. But yeah, it's just nice to be able to see this like blob of green text every time you launch, so that way you know that you have loaded things properly. Yeah, so obviously what we're going to want to do after this is load up some sort of config that makes this plugin do something. So I'm not going to go into too much detail just because it is already commented out pretty heavily. So if you want to read into the nitty-gritty, then you can just simply look at it yourself, but I will go over a couple of things about CastingEssentials through our example. So the first thing you're going to see is all these CE commands. These are basically all of the fixes for what CE can do. So, for example, auto switch makes you auto switch off of or to the killer's POV on a player death. And you can set the delay for how long that is. You can force so you are always spectating a live player. You can use the fancy looking CE glows. You can fix players that are sometimes invisible. All that fun stuff. We also, importantly, have CE team scores enabled 1. This is going to be different depending on what HUD you're using. To my knowledge, well, I guess it depends on you, if you have support built for it. But, yeah, you can basically either have the score kept in the HUD, which can be problematic, especially if you have a system like NA where you have multiple halves, or you can do the HUD not having the score and have it be a graphic on stream, which is a much more common approach, which is why sometimes you'll see this disabled. And then these are all of the HUD charge bars. They are all, so basically one of the nice things that CE allows us to do is you can see all of the charges. So like you can see medic percentage without having to like spectate the medic. You can see like if somebody's running the buff banner, stuff like that. It's really nice. And these are the settings to set that up. And then most importantly, I want to go over the binds, because this is what everybody is going to have different to them. So these are my spectating binds. I use QWERTY for red team and 1 through 6 on the blue team. The nice thing about this setup is it allows me to observe one-handed, so I can pretty much just have my left hand hovering over the numbers on the left side, and then just shift down 1 row to QWERTY whenever I want to spectate anybody on red. And then all of the off classes are on the F keys, so I move up a row if I need to swap to a one of them fancy off classes. However, not everybody likes to observe like this. The most common way I've seen people set up their observing setup is they will have one team such are set up so they are the number keys 1 through 9, and then another team set up so they are the numpad 1 through. I see that a lot. But yeah, just kind of find what binds work for you. Obviously, all of these are easily changeable. The other things that are probably worth noting is this bind right here. Basically, the other file we have, this CE fix button. We use this in-game as a sort of way to fix things on the broadcast without actually having to open up the developer console. So basically, instead of having to, let's say for example, you have to change the team score. So CE team score delta blue 1. So you have to increase team blue score by 1 for some reason. And you don't want to be in the middle of observing and then have this giant, not only the escape menu, but the console block all of what everybody's seeing. So instead, you just CE team scores delta blue 1. You would save this, and then in game, you just hit that bind, it'll execute the config for you, it'll change that for you, and it's a really, really neat hack to change things on the screen without ever having to open the console. Obviously, you still have to have this opened in Notepad outside of TF2, otherwise it's not going to be of any use to you while you are observing. But it's really nice to have to fix things really quick. Outside of that, another thing that a lot of people don't have bound is move up, and actually I'm dumb. I think that's the default binds for those. My memory's a little fuzzy. But I think that's all I will go over in the configs. And with that being said, let's actually talk about like the camera work. Now that we've gotten out of the way, we finally actually, we have set up TF2. We're ready to do some observing. So what are the important things to keep in mind always? So basically, your goal is to capture the most forward action possible. You want to be showing the viewer all of, the action, and usually that is found with whatever player is farthest forward for their respective team. Um, so usually finding that perspective is the best one to look at. If there's a scout running towards a choke and he's the furthest person forward, probably watch that scout. Another thing that's really, really important about observing is predicting and showing what's going to be on next. A lot of people get caught up with just watching one particular moment, and then will miss a bunch of action right after, like spectating one thing. This is something I've learned in just TV broadcast in general, but you never want to be thinking about what's happening. You always want to be thinking about what's happening next. And this is where game sense becomes really, really relevant to observing. There is a direct correlation between how much you know about the game and how easy it becomes to watch the game in terms of doing camera work. If you, even when it comes down to, not just knowing what teams generally do, but knowing what specific teams do, knowing what specific players do. Knowing those tendencies on that level helps you predict camera work in such a way is that you feasibly don't have an excuse even without cheat feed, which I guess is something I haven't mentioned yet, and I guess I'll touch on later. It basically makes it really the better understanding you have of the game, the easier it's going to be to observe. I guess that kind of seems intuitive, but just something to point out. Another thing that is really important with observing is prioritizing visual storytelling over just pure frag capture. Frag movies exist for a reason, and there's a reason we have demos, so we can go back and watch things. However, when I say this, a lot of this does come from. So I guess at this point I will explain what the cheat feed is. So basically, in TF2, there is another observing tool called the cheat feed, and basically it allows you to see what is going to happen 90 seconds ahead of time. Effectively, it'll allow you to see what's happening in the server in real time, so who's killing who, what Uber percentages are like, who's captured what points, etc. Basically anything that'll show up in the kill feed and the chat. And a lot of times, newer observers or just observers who are inexperienced in general will tend to rely heavily on swapping to the people who are specifically getting kills based on just using the guidance of the cheat feed instead of simply trying to keep a visual narrative going. And when I say visual narrative, I mean more so making sure each swap from player to player, you don't swap from one player to the next really very quickly, and it's just consistent. But yeah, with that being said, you do still want to catch multi-kills and high-skill individual plays. One of the goals of broadcasting these games is to, showcase the top level of TF2 and what you can do in the video game. And obviously it would be missing if you didn't catch some sick air shots and some sick multi-kills on stream. However, and I know that sounds like that, what I just said completely contradicts this point. And the reason they don't contradict each other is because typically you want to prioritize multi-kills and high-skill individual plays. This point is more so just about don't swap randomly to one person that gets like a chip shot damage. If you see somebody that's in a 1v1 and you know who's going to win every single time, and you observe the winning person every single time because of cheat feed, eventually the viewer catches on and starts realizing, oh, this is just the person that's going to win that fight every time. And that still can like provide the viewer with information, but it doesn't. It can ruin the storytelling experience of what the camera is doing. I think this is something I touched on briefly earlier, but you want to avoid quick consecutive POV cuts. So basically, you don't want to be swapping constantly, like 3, 4, 5 classes in a row. A lot of times that's going to be really disorienting to the viewer, and they're not going to be able to tell what's going on at all. A really good rule of thumb is swap from the same team to the same team, and the same class to the same class, and preserve a line of sight. So if 2 players are looking in the same direction on the same team, it's probably pretty safe to swap between them. It won't create any sort of jarring sudden cut. And then one thing that I think is missed quite a bit is this last bit, which is complementing the commentary with camera work. I feel like this isn't focused on as often, and it kind of should be. Part of your job is, you know, you are one half of a team. The casters are the audio, and you are the video. Um, and if you are constantly capturing things that are contrary or like different to what the casters are talking about, once again, for the viewer, that can create confusion, and it can be not ideal. Yeah, I think that's all I have for that slide. So going into talking about the different types of maps. So obviously in 5, in 6 versus 6, the main competitive game mode, you have 2 main types of maps. You got Control Point and you have KotH. So in terms of observing Control Point maps, the first thing you're going to ever deal with, and not only just any round but any match, is the mid fight. Who's getting there first? Once again, this harkens back to going to those main points. And a lot of this is just going to be echoing these basic observing concepts, but exploring them a little bit deeper. So again, focusing on catching the most forward action possible. Who's arriving first? Most of the time, it's going to be your demo man. 99% of rollouts, you're going to be observing the demo man. Sometimes, however, you are going to see, fast roamer rollouts like Process or Snakewater. And then on King of the Hill maps, oftentimes the team kind of shows up as one giant blob. So a lot of times on King of the Hill maps, especially Viaduct, it can be beneficial to watch other classes rollouts. But the majority of the time, you're going to be seeing which demo gets to mid first, or in the case of certain maps that have the option for a soldier to roll out faster, such as Process and Snakewater. Look out for when the roamers are trying to get a jump on the demo men. As a lot of times, especially when these fast roamer rollouts happen, they usually have a big impact on the mid. Usually these are going to either result in a roamer instantly dying or a demo instantly getting nuked. In either way, that's action people are going to want to see. A lot of times, the order in which I am thinking about things happening on mid is I'm listening for when soldiers are jumping, then I'm watching for when scouts are walking across the point. The other 2 things that you will see a lot, I would say it's pretty uncommon, but off classes to mid can and do occur. So be wary of each team's loadout of 6 gamers every time they spawn, because you never know when somebody's just gonna say "fuck it, sniper to mid," and then all of a sudden you've missed the craziest 3K headshot of your life because you decided to not pay attention to, oh, there's a sniper. Once again, paying attention to off classes. And then most often, mid fights are when you are ever going to see crit screen come out. It'll also occasionally come out during, you know, situations where both medics die, and you'll gain an uber advantage by picking up the crits. But for the most part, this is the other situation where you're going to see medics change metagun, and it's to get that slight advantage at mid to try and play off of a long mid crits play. And then once all of this concludes and you finally have a winner, some things that you're going to be wanting to take into account are Ubers. Ubers are honestly the best thing to track in terms of being an observer. Like, you can't get more information than just constantly staring at the two Uber bars, because it just, because of how important the Uber mechanic is to the dynamics of TF2, like, always paying attention to, is there a medic alive, is there a medic dead, especially when it comes to mid-fights, is going to give you a really good read on what's going to happen during the round. Especially if a medic dies during the mid. Because a lot of times, if the winning team keeps their medic alive, and the losing team doesn't, that's just free Uber advantage to push into last, seconds probably forfeit. In that case, you're starting to think about spectating off classes on last to set up an establishment of what the defense is going to be like. Then you're going to be looking at the defensive demo man, seeing where he's sticking up, whether he's putting sticks on the point or sticking different areas to try and get a force early in and make sure that they have to use Uber. Yeah, just keeping track of the Ubers on a mid conclusion can give you so much information about who to watch post mid. If it's a roll mid, once again, watch for those defensive off classes. Engineer and heavy are the most common. You'll see pyro on smaller maps like Goalie Wash and in conjunction with said engineer. Another thing that happens really commonly at the end of mids is players getting stuck behind or caught forward. This will be the roamer that, lives and makes it behind on mid only. And you want to keep just a mental note of these players in your mind. Because often these are the players that will come from behind and make really high skill individual plays. So these are the players that are going to be bombing it back in from behind and killing the medic, or flanking back in. These players can also just be total feeders, so once again, it's good to keep mental note of them, but don't always keep your eye on them. And then just another thing to keep in note that's a general game sense thing is the higher Uber percentage a medic has, the more value that medic's life has, and the more dangerous it is to put them into risky situations. This plays into the Uber the Uber keeping track of that, but yeah, just as you see medics increase in their Uber percentage, you're going to see them starting to play slightly, less risky, trying to play more for their lives over their own teams. Obviously, up until the point in which they get Uber, at which case they they have the Uber to use if they're hurt. So going on, so I also want to talk about, and I know a lot of this is just going over some basic game sense concepts that you may be familiar with, and I just want you to bear with me. I think it's really important to reiterate these concepts and make sure that they are kind of like universally understood, because missing out on this game sense knowledge makes it a lot more difficult to observe, in my opinion. Not understanding the basic dynamics of how maps work in 6v6. And I think that understanding, the specifics once you have the basic concepts is, important. So, anyways, on even Uber holds, a lot of times you're just going to see 1 or 2 player sacks. Most of the time, you're going to be watching a roamer or a scout. And the reason that I specify that is because sometimes you'll see pockets do fake bombs, and you may just make the mistake of being like, oh, I see a soldier bombing through choke, and choose to observe that player. And then they turn right back around, and the other soldier successfully bombs through and kills their medic, and you just missed it. So keep in mind, usually 99% of the time, the soldier that's designated as the roamer on that team is going to be the one that's going for the actual bomb, and the pocket is going to be the homie that's going for the fake bomb. This isn't always the case, of course. Soldier slots, especially at higher levels, can be pretty interchangeable, but it's a nice rule of thumb to go on, especially when you are spectating invite and advanced matches. And then once the attempt on a medic's life happens, basically 1 or 2 things happen. You either get an unsuccessful force or drop, which can mean that maybe once you spawn, you get a sniper or a spy going, some sort of pick class that you're going to watch. Or it can also lead to a counter force or a counter push. So you can expect either a soldier to be sacking the other way, in which case you want to be observing them, a scout sacking the other way, or a 2-man opposite. Or depending on the situation, you might see the team that is up a player try and use that player advantage to take an Uber trade. So in that case, a lot of times you're going to be wanting to watch combo players. Another thing, I mentioned it earlier, but I think it's really important to reiterate, watching demos for sticky trap placement can be real useful information, especially when demos end up blind deading, and you end up on a demo POV with 5 people in the kill feed, and you have no clue how they actually died, other than, oh, sticky trap. It gives the viewer an idea of where things may have taken place. The other concept I want to go over is leapfrogging. This is how a lot of Uber advantage situations tend to go in TF2. So basically, you'll get Team A successfully defends a push. They get Uber ad. They then attempt to push with said Uber ad. They use the Uber. They don't kill the enemy medic. The enemy medic gets Uber, and they're back in the same position, basically. So usually this will repeat with 1 or 2 outcomes. You'll become an even Uber stalemate, in which case you'll return to this stage of the game where you're throwing sacks at each other, or you'll get to the point where they're able to take a point for free and have Uber advantage to go into a last push. A lot of times, leapfrogging back and forth will end up resulting in super broken up, uncoordinated fights. A lot of 1v1s, one of mechanical skill, and this is where once again high individual skill plays can make differences. And just again, the reason I bring up the basic concept of leapfrogging, most people, I would imagine that a lot of people who have watched or played competitive TF2 would understand this, but in the context observing, it's also important to think about what stage of the game you are in, because it's going to change who you're going to want to watch. In leapfrog situations, a lot of the times you're going to be watching a lot of the combo players, because there's going to be constant back and forth, Uber into the team, one way or the other. And you're also going to be wanting to watch, oftentimes, scouts. Most of the times, eventually, medics will die in leapfrogs, and you'll break down into a bunch of 1v1 fights, and 99% of the time, especially at higher levels, those fights are cleaned up handily by very, very good scouts who know how to click good. So moving on from that, I want to talk a little bit about the differences between observing and King of the Hill and 5CP. King of the Hill is, I think, taxing is the best word to describe King of the Hill when it comes to observing. It is constant action due to the central objective, and it's basically a constant mid-fight over the course of the 3 minutes each team gets to cap. It's basically coming back here and watching this every 45 seconds. Oh, I've skipped ahead too far. Every 45 seconds. It's a lot to keep track of as an observer. Obviously, with 5CP, you have a lot of opportunities for stalemates. You have a lot of opportunities for teams to slow each other down. King of the Hill, none of this is true. It is you are W keying for that point, just because of the nature of the time restrictions of King of the Hill. One thing that is going to make a huge difference to King of the Hill is Uber charge type and percentage. However important you thought Uber was on 5CP, it is the name of the game on King of the Hill. The King of the Hill has some of the best highlighted medic gameplay, just because medics are constantly under pressure for spam and damage. You see a lot more crits use on King of the Hill than you do on any 5CP map, especially in current year. That is to say, more relative. Most of the time, you do still see Uber charged used in King of the Hill maps. They are just the ideal map to bring out of crits. And a lot of times, just having the heal advantage, let alone, and being able to play off of much smaller Uber advantages is definitely a thing. So, just how I know I stress this a lot on 5CP, but I'm stressing it even more here. Watch the Uber numbers. They will be your best friend, especially because right next to the Uber percentage, most times with most spectating HUDs, including the one that we're using today, it's going to be literally right next to it. You're going to see the type and the percent right there. Bing, bang, boom. One package of information for your brain to process. So just hammer it in there. Keep track of Ubers while you're observing. It will help you. And so one concept that is pretty unique to King of the Hill is 4-man sack plays. So basically, the idea is you are down full Uber advantage. The time's ticking no matter what, and you want to get that Uber done as fast as possible instead of throwing your team, while also building your own Uber. So basically, you send 4 of your players, usually both of your soldiers, a demo man, and a scout, to sack at the same exact time in order to coordinate for the Uber force or drop. Meanwhile, your medic is sitting back in spawn with your scout, who is remaining, to build off that Uber and try and be time efficient. A lot of times, this is where you're going to see the most pressure on whatever medic is currently holding the point. It is really fun to observe that medic and just watch projectiles come in, especially when that medic then proceeds to surf like an absolute baller away from projectiles. So watching medics during 4-man sacks can actually be really fun. That, and also, it's an opportunity for an Uber force or drop. So watching whoever gets to the medic first and watching them drop or force said medic is also a really solid play. The other concept that's kind of different in King of the Hill is forward holding. It's kind of the only sort of secondary objective you have. Obviously you have to take the main point, but you can also take a forward hold. I think most of the time when I see forward holds, I see them either on Viaduct, which I guess isn't in this season, or on Bagel. I don't think I've seen any forward holds used as often on Clear Cut, but certainly on Bagel and Viaduct. And basically, after successful wipe, you're going to see teams playing in forward positions to lock out spawning opponents. Basically, you're going to see teams trying. It's the closest thing you can get to spawn camping, right? You just lock them into the little area that's slightly outside of spawn, where all the doorways are to actually get to the fight. And the reason I bring up forward holding is because typically they can be broken with off classes. I think the best case example of this is people using Pyro to break out the forward hold on Viaduct. Let's check that. I'll worry about that later. Big hole. But yeah, I think that's all I really have to go over in terms of like basic concepts and the kind of main differences in kind of flow between 5CP and King of the Hill. And I do actually have an example demo prepared just to show off some of all the stuff I've been talking about. I realized I did a brain fart. I never actually executed my config. So you'll see by itself the HUD is not exactly 100% working right now. However, if we exec RGL example, 6v6 observing config upload or executed. And now we play demo, and well, damn, we've got item icons, we've got the team score. We'll fix that. By the way, you can change the team names by using. Oh. Wait. I don't have the command memorized off the top of my head, but you can change the names of the teams in the top. We're gonna actually. I kind of want to reload this demo just because I want to go over the mid. I kind of brain farted there when talking about CE. But yeah, 5CP map. We're going to be starting off by watching the demo roll out. We're going to be watching an artist here come through choke. I usually also like to swap to the other demo once he gets there, just so we can establish for the viewer an idea of when both demos are getting there. We're seeing that first soldier, not to spectate Alpha there, but we're seeing that first soldier bomber in, not really taking much ground. Now Alpha's coming back and doing that. Now Alpha's out, so explaining while observing is a skill that is quite difficult. I think we might slow down speed here a little bit. I thought I accidentally closed Chrome wall. We're going to wait for this to capture. Slow this down a little bit so I can try and talk while I'm also thinking and observing at the same time. So at this point, Howard is the most forward person. He's got information on the whole team. But now we have Sandblast coming forward. We also saw both soldiers bombing in midair. Sin ends up taking that kill. and the second as well. So now we're going to see blue team starting to walk forward. Watch the demo get ready. Logan setting up a trap. We're getting the bomb in. They're already out of choke. And at this point, we're going to be watching for the soldiers here. Once again, because they're likely to be some of the first in when they come into bomb. Looks like they're actually going to be leading with Cap, so we're going to swap to the scout POV. They have Uber, and they're looking to exchange. So we're going to swap over to Logan. He's getting the beam right now, and we're going to see if they decide to take anything. If they don't, we're going to try and swap back to the other team. A little bit of a blunder there in terms of observing. Once again, you want to try and avoid cuts like that where you're swapping for multiple players at once. Here we're going to watch Sin bomb through. That's going to get the Uber forced. A lot of times in that scenario, I wasn't sure where the Uber was going to be happening, so it's easiest to just swap to the medic, and then that'll give you just the viewer still some sort of idea of who's in the Uber, and from there you can swap to the main Uber target. You can also use the buff icons on the right as well as watching if health is going up to determine if somebody is getting Ubered. As well as the little icon, had a brain fart on words, in the HUD that identifies Ubered players. So yeah, at this point, it is Uber disadd for F-150, but they are holding 2, so they're not going to be able to really do much. It looks like Cap is going to be the most far forward player on his team, though. They're going to be trying to take this fight evenly. Artist is starting to do damage. Both of these soldiers are walking forward, Sib's jumping behind. Once again, a lot of time you're trying to capture the most far forward person. In this case, it's Rakuso, who's actually gone so far forward he's behind. Unfortunately, that sucks because he's going to die and not do anything. When you have situations like that where you have both players kill each other, it's really important to trying to think about who to swap to next, especially if both players are low health. So there you saw that I swapped to Howard. If I didn't swap to Howard there, the camera would have just stayed on that spot with Sandblast's dead name, and it would just dead name. It would just do that, and then the camera would be stuck. So you have to make a swap there of some sort. You see Sub coming in really early on the bomb, so we're going to swap over to him. He doesn't end up getting it, and he ends up leaving. So we're going to watch Howard, who's pretty decently far forward. We have Rakuso bombing from Bell Tower. He's got tons of damage, and he's going to secure the kill. We're now going to watch Cap go forward, trying to defend his medic. Unsuccessful. Catface is now in choke, chasing Dalal guy, so we're going to swap to that. One thing to be noted is that these smoothing settings are incorrect, and I'll actually fix that for the config in my Google Drive as well. But usually you are not smoothing from that far away. Also, don't have ADHD moments where you just swap between players like I do. It's a very bad habit. That's a side effect of my neurodivergency. And it can be really jarring to viewers. So, do not that. Yeah, I only observed this for a few more minutes, but once again, I just want to kind of be talking through what I'm thinking about while I'm watching. You know, this is kind of the thought process I'm going through to think about who I'm going to be watching next. I know I'm not always super cohesive, especially when I'm talking while I'm observing a lot. It is just a difficult task to be thinking about the observing and doing the observing and talking about the observing. So you'll have to forgive me. At this point, once again, we have seen pretty much an Uber stalemate. It looks like it was actually, yeah. They were waiting for it to even out, and at this point they're going to be trying to look for places to open up. So we're just seeing the spam. Right here, I'm cutting between the soldier and the demo because I want to try and have a constant view of the attack on the combo. Rakuso's jumping through and in, so we're going to swap the POV to him. And nearly hits Lolkai. Lol guy does manage to survive on 80 HP, and we're going to be expecting to see some sort of counter sack, and we do with Alpha. Alpha actually decides to not go for anything, as it seems they ended up getting aggressed in Valley. At this point, we're watching Cap once again. It's one of the most far forward players and is helping. Oh, actually, no. Those are staying committed. Yeah. Sometimes it is also just nice to come back to a defensive POV. Especially like the scout POV we just had was a great overview of where everybody was standing, and it gave you a great idea of how that defense was going to be set up to take on Rakuso's bomb, which was ultimately not successful. Here we're seeing Soapy's counterbomb almost immediately, and unsuccessful in the Forcer drop. So we're going to keep on going back and forth here. Looks like we've got Sin getting in position, trying to get forward. Hasn't found anything. Cap's also looking at Choke, so we're going to see what he's found. Looks like Alpha's getting aggressive into Cafe. Guess we missed that interaction, but he forced Rakuso out. Alright, I'm going to see if Rakuso decides to go for this once more. And he will. It's actually the fake bomb. Or he just decides to not go for it on a buff. Either way. We're going to rotate to where the heals are, which is where Cap is. He's the farthest forward. He has the buffy wuffies at the moment. This is demo here as well. Soap's going to get rolled by Artist Trap. And once again, oh, accidental swap to the enemy team. We're going to see Catface end up dying there. We're actually going to see... Oh. That was a very failed attempt to watch Rakuso. Yeah, we're going to see the Uber get forced out. I'm noticing one thing I'd prefer TFTV's HUD over this, simply because TFTV HUD has an indicator for which players are Uber charged on the HUD, instead of just having to go off of heals and visuals. One thing that you'll note is basically the main skill in TF2 observing is getting all of your information based on who you're currently observing, as well as, you know, wall hacks and game knowledge. Because, yeah, you don't really get much other information. So being able to basically predict what's going to happen and trying to watch who's the farthest forward through walls is your best option. Occasionally in multi-observer setups, you will have the ability to have multiple perspectives and share those between the observers, so that way everybody gets more information, but usually that's only done in LAN contexts. And due to current global pandemic, that has been happening a lot less. Yeah, once again, looking at the Uber charges tells us everything we need to know. It's going to be an even Uber situation. It's going to be a stalemate. We're going to be looking for soldiers to start doing soldier things. 99% of the time, especially in mid to second, 3 to 2 attempts, it's going to be soldier sacks all the way down. You very rarely see a scout sack unless it's intentional for a sniper play. Rakuso's doing his darndest to die. And I think something that's important there, so one of the concepts I talked about was not always chasing the killer's POV. So there you'll notice we stayed on Rakuso instead of swapping to Logan. I don't think it was inherently obvious that Logan was going to kill Rakuso there. But with cheat feed, we would have known that was going to happen, and when it was going to happen as well. So in scenarios like that, stay on the soldier, let the soldier die. It lets the player, from the viewer's perspective, we've watched that entire soldier sack attempt, right? We've watched sack attempt from jumping to getting in to eventually dying. We don't watch half of the sack attempt and oh, now it's the POV of the scout. The scout's defending the sack attempt. That creates two sort of two dialogues about the situation, right? One is a scout defending from a sack, and one is a soldier trying to get the sack on the medic. And I know a detail like that sounds really small and frivolous, but it does make a big difference when you're talking about visual storytelling and trying to create a narrative with the broadcast. Especially when it comes into cohesion with casters. Small differences like that, combined with cohesion with casters, will make the difference between a broadcast that's really easy and fun to watch and a broadcast where it feels like it's a chore and either the observing or the casting leave something to be desired in terms of catching all of the action. Because once again, you are one half of a team here. You want to be complementing everything that the players, the viewers are listening to on screen. So here we're actually going to see a situation that could set up for potential leapfrog, as we're going to see a full Uber advantage on the side of May. All guys going to be holding 2 with the rest of his team. They actually have a player ad that's going to be still 2-player ad even, so they're going to have quite a bit of time to delay and build here. But we're still going to probably see Witness Gaming try and come through. They're once again making the mistake of swapping to the wrong player. Soap looks like he's actually in behind and fighting these players. So we're going to watch this active fight just because it has implications for delaying the entire flank. That play that Soap just made gave Lol Guy the time to build Uber here. They're going to be trying to take it in, but now there's not enough time. And we were able to show that off visually instead. So keep in mind, I sound like I'm a play-by-play caster right now, and a little bit of that is just because I'm also a commentator, and that's how I talk about TF2, I suppose, when I'm watching it like this. But I'm pretty much just trying to enunciate what I am doing with the camera and why I am doing it. If I wasn't talking, all of the same things, explanations would still be valid about the observing, and that would be the intention of my camera work. And you can tell that there's a story being told with how I'm trying to, present the game. It's not just only trying to view every single kill, which I think is, again, just a concept I want to hammer hard home. So right there, we watched the demo on the rollout, then we watched the initial bomb, swap to the Rakuso bomb, it failed, so now we're going to actually, accidental swap off the wrong scout, but I wanted to watch that fight in choke. We're now going to watch the combo try and re-enter. Soap is already in, we're going to swap to him, he's the farthest player forward, and he's going to take a pick. The scout is going to clean up the second, and Catface is actually behind, picks up Lol Guy. I don't think he's going to complete the 1v3, but instead of swapping to Howard, we're going to watch him attempt it. A lot of times in 1vx situation, this is something that actually comes up a lot, not just TF2, but esports observing in general. 1vx situation, so 1v1, 1v2, 1v3. Usually it's at least 1v2, 1v3. You always want to watch the 1. Almost always want to watch the 1. A general rule of thumb is watch the 1. Because that is the highest potential for a huge play to be made, right? That person gets huge multi-kill, kills everybody that, the odds are stacked against them. And, they potentially save the point or the round or whatever objective that they're attempting to do. So it kind of sets you up for the best chances of capturing a play like that as an observer. However, you also do run the risk more often than not of catching a player get dookied on. And that's totally okay. Because it's something that happened in the match. Like, keep in mind, you are doing visual storytelling. You are not making a frag video. If a player's getting dookied all match, show that. Show that that player is getting, like, nuked. Like, obviously, don't make it, don't make your observing solely based on who is the worst player I can watch. Harlem Globetrotters style, like, just throwing. But, like, you want to have balance. Let's see if there's any questions. Not really. Yeah. I don't really know if I have any other thoughts I want to add. Actually, I just realized something. Yeah, I had Match HUD on an accident. Also have to add that to the config. As you'll see in the HUD, timer for the round is on the top, for the match is on the bottom. That's a big rain play. But yeah, I've obviously gone over some of my own observing work, but now I kind of want to look at a couple of other examples from TF2. So basically the reason I want to do this is I kind of want to highlight the difference between two types of broadcasts. Or at least the two types of broadcasts that are going to change how observing is going to work. So the two VODs I want to go over are the most recent Invite Grand Finals, Froyotech versus Witness Gaming. We're not going to watch every map, but we're just going to watch a little bit of one map from each Grand Final and kind of compare and contrast how things are done. So this Invite Final happened just a week or two ago. So things to note about it. Observer is dolphiN, current organizer, main producer, and observer for RGL. This was an online production, and it was a one-person production. That's important to note because dolphiN is not only doing all of the observing, dolphiN is also changing all of the graphics, making sure all the sound is correct, interacting with the casters to make sure that they're timed and queued correctly every time you make a transition, making sure that for this particular cast, the analyst was queued in at the end of each map and phased out at the beginning of the next map or before a break or whatever. dolphiN had a lot of responsibilities outside of just observing, and that's really important to note because it makes your life 10 times more stressful when you're not just worried about who am I watching and, am I catching all the action, and you're also worrying about, oh god, Twitch chat's blowing up, or oh god, something in the graphics is wrong, or oh, for the love of god, I've left the logs on the screen again. No comment on that last one. May or may not be me. But there's a lot of things that can go wrong just on the broadcast side when you're producing solo and observing. The other example I want to look at is the most recent International LAN final, TF2 Insomnia 65, 7 versus Ascent.NA. The main thing to note is we basically have 3 observers. Gemm was the primary observer. Sim, so he was doing all of the first-person switching. Sim was our secondary observer. So basically, the observing methodology that we went with for this event was we had a primary observer who would do all first person, and a secondary observer who would do a couple of things. That's where we got all of our free cam shots from, either free cam or free cam smooths. All of the free cam smooths were directed in some way. And we also used that for picture-in-picture, usually either for sniper plays, usually for sniper plays because our secondary observer HUD was a little bit strange in the way it was set up. So it didn't show like some HUD elements, I suppose. And then I was functioning as the in-game director. So basically, I was doing two things. I was deciding when we would cut to the primary observer and when we would cut to the secondary observer, and I was also directing the secondary observer on what shots I wanted in terms of what free cams and what smooths I wanted. So where I wanted the camera to pan, things like that, setting up shots beforehand. Basically, all three of us worked together to try and get all of the camera work done. And the other thing that's important to note about this is this also a land stage production. Gemm is just doing primary observing. Sim's just doing secondary observing. I'm just in-game directing. We have an entire production team that is also one person handling audio, one person technical directing. One of the production assistants is handling the graphics. We have people on stage doing camera work and with the teams. I think we had a roaming camera. My memory is foggy from that weekend. But we had a huge production team that was able to handle all the technical side. So the main pressure on these three individuals is just doing the in-game camera work, putting on the best show in-game we can. And that distinction, again, should be really clarified in context when watching these. So we're going to pop over to RGO. Froyotech versus Witness Gaming. People in my life are dying, apparently. Yeah. At this point, does anybody have any questions? Question mark? I mean, obviously, the chat's open. I'm answering shit whenever, but now's the time. We're just waiting for advertisement to be over so we can watch some of this Invite Grand Final. And the other thing is I'm gonna try and have caster audio up, because one thing I want to point out is the relationship between the actually that's another thing we can point out between these, just extra context. So for Insomnia 65, the observers were the same perspective that the casters got. The casters basically casted off of our observing. If memory serves right. A lot of the times, casters will either cast from a third. Let me rephrase or start that sentence over. A lot of times, casters will not have the observer POV. Instead, they will have to rely on their own. Most of the time, without CastingEssentials, and most of the time, just again without the the thing I wanted to finish that with was most of the time in third-person free cam. So usually casting, you have a top-down perspective so that way you can catch all of the action happening. You can switch to different players as they're making plays and as they're getting kills. But if you really want to see all of the hectic chaos that's going on from a broader perspective, a lot of times you watch overhead as a caster. This was not the case with Insomnia 65. The casters had the observer feed the whole time. I think they might have even had like a multi-view sent to them that had like both observer feeds, but that I might be blurring that with different events that worked. But typically speaking, and this is just another difference between online and LAN production. Online production, there are utilities in TF2 that allow you to see and mirror what the observer is doing. However, I believe that that tool is currently proprietary. You could also just send like a Discord stream or whatever to your casters. It's honestly preferable to have them have some sort of POV, but it's just important to note that difference between these broadcasts. So let's try and find this actually starts. Come on. Here we are. So yeah, let's start watching this. So the first thing I want to note is this free cam use right here. This is a great establisher shot that shows, you know, the whole team at the beginning of the round. I like this use, and this is one of the things I might be generally critical of, is third-person free cam use in TF2. The majority of observing you'll see in TF2 is from first-person perspective. Camera angles like this are not used as much. I think there are some really good uses for these types of cameras. However, I think I don't remember if it's this map or Bagel, but I'll point out some misuses of it and how that could be, I think, potentially changed for the better. But this use of it to establish, you know, what's basically called an establisher shot, you are establishing, you know, the initial visual idea. That being, you know, it's the blue team rolling it. And then we swap to the Habib POV. We love this. Very cohesive. We're watching Habib. We're now seeing artists. They've gotten there at about the same time. They're trading sticky spam. At this point, once again, an establisher shot. We haven't seen either the teams really taken any sort of action on the mid yet. Using third-person cam here, solid play. That way you kind of get an idea of where both teams are playing. And once again, the focus is on that blue team. So more extra cohesion layered on top. Accidental swap there, no big deal. This happened. Here we're watching Habib dump a bunch of damage. Doesn't hits some decent damage, but doesn't find anything. We're gonna swap to just accidental swap to Yite. Yeah. And then here, I like observing Lol Guy here. It's important to watch Lol Guy because Lol Guy needs to get out. And so, yeah, this is... Actually, no. I was about to say... I had criticism there, but then my brain kind of malfunctioned because I think I resolved the criticism in my own head. There was nothing wrong with that. But yeah. This is the other kind of, like, risk you run when you use a lot of third-person free cam, is that you have you have more buttons to accidentally swap to, right? You have more POVs that you can potentially just have nothing going on. Because one thing that should be noted about third-person free cams is that you basically are going to need either a numpad or a stream deck or some sort of other hardware to be able to utilize them effectively. You can also, like, I've seen setups with binds all over the keyboard, or I suppose you could even try moving things to the F keys. But you're basically just going to need that extra space for more binds in order to swap to these different camera angles. So it does open you up to these accidental swaps we're seeing. And I'm not really digging on dolphiN. Like, these things happen. Like, I literally, as I was just showing, like, doing the observing demo on that Witness versus GCI match, like, I made tons of accidental swaps. They happen. I'm just kind of, once again, kind of trying to point things out about the specific things about third-person free cam. Yeah, once again, establishing the red team starting to push into point. Watching Banny is the most forward person who was defending. We're going to swap to Laz's jump in. That will get the force. Now we're going to watch Mirror Man counter forward here. This is good. It looks like they've decided to back out, so we're going to spectate. Yeah. I feel like a lot of times, basically, we're just seeing, like, accidental, like, slight, I don't know. This, I wouldn't utilize, a lot of times, the reason that you want to utilize a third person pre-cam to, sort of set up and establish your shot, as I said, is due to a lot of chaos going on, or basically too much action or an absolute lack of action. Those are the best scenarios for using free cams. And I feel like a lot of time, well, maybe not a lot of times, but I feel like there's definitely scenarios where there is use of it when there is just the right amount of action, and you could better like direct your focus on one or two visual narratives. Alright, that's good. We watch Ash die there. That's really important to see since we didn't see the stickies laid down. We're watching the medic because it's likely that we're going to see an attempt. They do have ad. Yeah, so this is another example, I think, of watching the kill or watching the kill feed or cheat feed instead of playing. I don't know. I feel like the artist bomb should have been the focus point as soon as you hear the caster called out. As soon as you hear the artist is jumping, that's something you want attention on, right? Demo bombs are usually pretty big in terms of potential for things happening. And I feel like the fact that we didn't see that, even though it did fail, is a little bit unfortunate. We did end up seeing Blaze kill a scout. I think Yite in like the little side plank on concrete. But I don't really think that contributed to the fight when the context of the fight very quickly changed to we're trying to hop onto the medic. I feel like that is it sort of distracts from where the casters are talking, and in that scenario, you want the focus to be on. The casters have been talking about getting this medic force, and then the opportunity comes where artist goes for the medic force. You want to be cohesive with them. And yeah, this is what I was talking about earlier with a perfect example of watching the pyro breaking the forward hold. In this case, we're watching from the perspective of Blaze, which I think is totally fine. We get to see his reaction as a pyro comes around the corner, ends up dying to it. And that fight concludes. We see the push on from concrete. We're watching Habib spam because he might hit some gnarly long-range pipes. See the Uber come in, flash jump. So for example, I don't agree with. I don't know if I agree with using free cam here once again, just for the same reasons. I don't want to repeat myself too much, so. Hold on, that's confusing. Not in terms of the observing, just the weird quirk, I think. Oh yeah, there's the HUD reload. Okay, I thought I spotted. I I don't. Yeah. Apologies, brain fart. But yeah, what I I think what's happening here is a lot of times, there's an establisher, but the problem with using an establisher like that, and I'm using that word a lot, but when I use that, I'm basically talking about when the free cam is swapped to in order to kind of give the viewer an overview of both teams before they fight. Um, but I feel like that's being overused a little bit too much. Most of the fights, there's like this totally neutral context, and I don't think that's always the best way to observe TF2. I think that giving a visual narrative, it's like for example, the beginning of the game was like a perfect flow of that. Like you had the free cam establishing, you know, Froyo are spawning because there's nothing happening at the beginning of the game. There's nobody to watch for action. Then you get the rollout. Then you get that big free cam showing that nobody's really jumped forward yet, and then we swap back to Froyo, and then we get the actual mid fight. I think uses like that are fantastic, and like the beginning of this match was super, super, super clean visually. But uses like this, where you're coming from a player perspective to the overview to establish the shot, and then you almost immediately have to it almost forces you to either have a way too fast camera swap, which is going to disorient viewers, or you're going to have to stay on that free cam way too long, and you're missing individual player plays. And I think that the trade-off of giving the viewer the information isn't always the best trade-off, depending on the scenario, especially when you see situations that we're seeing where it's basically just scouts facing forward and looking at the point. Because if you're observing those scouts, you were watching the farthest person forward. Those scouts are looking directly forward, and 99% of the time, because of the X-ray that is enabled thanks to these player outlines you'll see thanks to CE, um, you will be able to see rockets and stickies and players and pretty much where all of them are. They're looking forward, especially on a symmetrical map that's like KotH. Obviously, with 5 CP maps, you get players that go behind, you get players in flank routes. It's a little bit more complicated than that, but observing on King of the Hill does allow for that simplification to be made, I suppose. And I'm sorry if I'm like staying on certain subjects too much. I know some of these are definitely going to be nitpicks, but the reason that I'm kind of trying to break it down so much is because I'm trying to give people an understanding of what the observer is thinking about or what things might be considered while you're doing the observing. And once again, I'm not trying to dig at dolphiN at all. This was like a huge viewership match and just a high pressure match in general. Like this was a historic match to be able to be part of a broadcast of, and like there's lots of pressure, and also once again the fact that you are using free cams at all. I personally don't use free cams, and I like them. Don't get me wrong. As I said, they're good in very specific scenarios, and I like using them. But um, I'm sorry, I had a ADHD moment. Lost my train of thought. Um, Fuck. Hate to see it. But I think going over that whole round sums up a lot of my thoughts, I suppose. I mean, I watched the whole grand final live. It was brilliant to watch Witness Gaming's comeback. Um, but yeah, over the overall things I have to say about this is that this is a really good example both of how to use and how not to use third person free cams. I think like they're good uses of it, but it's also a little overdone, and I think there are points where it potentially can make the visual storytelling either a little bit more cluttered, if not disjointed from what the speakers or the commentators are talking about. And the other thing I wanted to watch was the I-65 TF2 final. Alright, so we have our intro bumper. So yeah, the first thing to already note that's just a general broadcast difference. First rollout does not get shown. Instead, this map bumper gets shown. So we do end up starting mid with the demo POV. So yeah, right here once again, you'll see Gemm started off watching KotH. Once it was established that KotH was at mid, we swap over to bot mode, watch them start to trade stickies. Very standard mid in terms of observing. Spot on. Yeah, and then this is something that I do a lot, so I think it's really funny that Gemm did it, but I think what Gemm did was heard the heavy start shooting and immediately swapped over, and that is perfect. This is an example of running an off class to a mid. Solentes went heavy to mid on LAN Grand Finals on stage. Like, just the spectacle of running heavy to mid on stage at a grand final of an international TF2 event. Beautiful. And, just the fact that this play actually works out for 7 is chef's kiss. So swapping to Solentes here is the play. This is the oddball out. And yeah, so I will admit one major flaw we had with our observing is that, and this was just due to a little bit of poor preparation on my part, is that for the observing setup, we did not have a controller setup, and we did not have HLAE properly functioning at the time. So we couldn't have super smooth camera movements, as opposed to, like, say, for example, the uses at Rewind 1 or Rewind 2. If you want to go look up those broadcasts both have excellent examples of third-person use as well. But yeah, basically just an establisher over there. Outside of Solentes attempting to mow people down from halfway across mid with the Tommy Slaw, which does less damage. So basically shooting rubber bullets at scouts. You don't really have anything going on outside of the shock factor, so a little bit of an establisher smooth to try and get things going. It was a little bit shaky. But again, doing mouse smooths is not easy. There we watch the Captain bomb. It's good. Yeah, we're watching 7 basically start to lock them out. Once again, swapping back to the off class. We watch the off class die, swap to Yite. KotH is the most forward player, is doing lots of damage, and we actually see the Uber get popped onto him, so it's good to keep the focus on him. Now that the Uber trade has gotten forced, we're going to... Alright. So yeah, at this point, we have Starkey and Sniper on the forwards. So we're going to stay on Starkey until a shot is taken. Actually, we're going to swap off. We have an establisher right here. Starkey's still sitting in spawn. And I believe we end up doing picture-in-picture here. No, we don't. Let's see, that's also just another difference between this broadcast and the grand final we just watched. We actually have a functioning video mixer. We have a really nice one actually on set, so we end up able to do things like picture in picture, having two different POVs, which is something that you're not really going to be able to do on any sort of normal broadcast most of the time. Yeah, right here watching skis, I think is totally fine. His team is wiped, so it's not like there's going to be anything to watch on second outside of some scouts standing on point. And this is a good establisher shot because it establishes Skis is waiting for his teammates. Now, oh, I am also remembering part of why we're swapping to medics. I think that the casters were I think it had something to do with making sure the casters knew Uber percentages. Again, I might be. I have done a much TF2 observing in production in my day, so this may just be me misremembering events in terms of the very specific details. This broadcast happened 2 years ago. Actually, 2 years ago to the. Oh no, not to the day. Uh, about a week off of that. Yeah, in the situation, we see that Ascent are Uber Desad. We're going to be watching KotH because it looks likely that he's going to be Ubered in. And here's where the picture-in-picture comes in. We see a sniper, but we also see an Uber. Yeah, the picture-in-picture carries all of the weight in that fight. I think in that fight, if you don't have the picture-in-picture, you just don't get a clear understanding of what's going on. But once again, that's a utility that you only really get on land. I just think it's worth pointing out that certain scenarios are just going to be sloppy because of the nature of TF2. In some scenarios, free cams, like third person free cams, can totally save you in those scenarios because you don't want to be. The worst scenario is you consistently accidentally swap to every person that ends up dying just before they die, and you just keep on swapping POVs to different people, and it just looks like a fucking absolute mess on the stream. That's the real you spam TTours in the chat. But like if you are ahead of the game, like thinking about, or like if you're able to view multiple viewpoints at the same time, like is possible on a LAN broadcast, then obviously there's way more information available to the viewer. They can choose to watch the sniper that is currently threatening the medic who wants to Uber into them from dropping. You can watch the opposite perspective, which is said medic avoiding the sniper and then the soldier bombing in to defend from said sniper. But it gives a good dichotomy between each team and what they're doing on the point. And you wouldn't really have that without that in that specific scenario. Yeah, at this point, there's not really much to watch here. And it's going to be just about even Ubers. Skis is going to even out by the time that 7 decide to do anything, as they are waiting for spawns. So this would be honestly one of the better times to do an overview shot. At the moment, it seems like we're just focusing on the medicinals. Watching where KotH puts his trap. Yeah. And then keep in mind, so you'll see over back here where the red stickies are. Because of CastingEssentials, we can see stickies and rockets through walls. I think I mentioned that previously, but I just wanted to reiterate. that information is useful to players who are watching. Yeah, now we're going to watch Salentes in on the bomb. Gets a couple of rockets onto skis. Isn't successful. So there we have that establisher. They do start talking about Laz, so maybe we should have swapped over there. But Laz doesn't end up doing anything. He pretty much just takes some room and saw, and then backs up immediately. Yeah, once again, we're watching bot mode. We're seeing where he puts his sticky traps. This can be really key when it comes time to try and take any space in yard. We don't want to see the medic drop. Or we actually do want to see the medic drop. Raymond doesn't want to see himself drop. Yeah, one thing I would definitely say is that we're seeing... I mean, there's no... I mean, I suppose that you don't really want to be watching Raymond here just because he's not the farthest person forward. There's not really any action going on. However, there's not any new information being gained by watching Raymond's POV. If we were to watch Starkey, for example, who's watching lower right now, we might be able to get an understanding of how Starkey is peaking and giving information to the rest of the team about what's going on in lower. If we watch Dalash, we can see, everything that's happening in Saw. You have to kind of keep in mind that the players are your cameras, so if you want to be looking at a specific thing, and players are in a specific place, right here, by observing Raymond, we can see Starkey's there. We can see we have the Lash here. We can see we have Captain. Or no, that's not. That was Captain. That's KotH. But, yeah, I think swapping to KotH here is good. KotH is getting deep with his peaks. There's a trap up as well. Yite as a hider here is good. Consider, watching... This, again, is perfect, cohesion when it comes in terms of creating a visual storyline. We were just watching KotH and Window set up sticks and spam. Now we swap to Yite, who's sitting just outside, is spamming Starkey lower, but might have the potential to jump through Window and fuck KotH up, or punish KotH if he peeks too far out Window and accidentally gets knocked down. So, once again, really small things like that create the cohesion you see in CAS. Now we're going to be watching Salentes come through lower. This is perfectly fine to swap. He gets good damage on skis, does not get the force. Swapping to skis is fine here. Skis is low HP and still deciding to walk forward. And now we've swapped. I was going to say we... one thing, the probably most common mistake you'll see observers make is swapping to the wrong scout or the wrong soldier. 99% of the time, I wouldn't say 99%. I'd say a significant portion of the time it can be avoided. Sometimes it can't. Depending on how you have your binds set up, sometimes if you press a bind, it'll just swap between which scout or soldier you're watching and not actually, just spect. That's why in my config, I actually specifically have it so that it spectates Blue Scout 0 and Blue Scout 1, because computers count from 0, kids. So it specifically only spectates Blue Scout 0. If this command is just spectate Blue Scout, this will just spectate the first Blue Scout that's alive, and if you keep hitting this button after you've already hit the button once, it will start rotating. So you hit 1, it'll go to Scout 1, you hit 1 again, it'll go to Scout 2, assuming they're alive, etc. So, a really easy way to avoid a really common observing problem, putting that 0 in there. It'll make sure that 1 only goes to Scout 1, or whatever you have this bound to. Blue Scout 0, not Blue Scout. I know that's a really dumb technical thing to point out, but it's a really easy way to fix a mistake a lot of people make really commonly. Um, and obviously, you know, choosing the wrong soldier or scout doesn't just happen because of bind issues. Sometimes you really do just think that it's one player when it's the other. But in 90, or sometimes you just don't have the visual information. Whoever you're observing just doesn't happen to be looking at the scout you want to see, or any scouts for that matter. So you just kind of have to take the blind guess and swap. Those situations are totally okay. They happen. They are very, very minor mistakes. They're not anything to really actually care about. At the end of the day, you can't control those mistakes. What we care about is the mistakes that we can't control, the things that we can do to actively improve the broadcast. You know. So yeah, let's continue watching here. So yeah, here we end up catching Les try and jump behind. He ends up dying. We get the camera swap to Starkey due to CastingEssentials doing it automatically. He's peeking lower. It's totally fine. Watching Thalash clearing these stickies is really, really important for this push. Or at least this next attack as Les is dead. Looks like they actually will be attempting to push. We're watching the farthest player forward here, Salentes, and hits the amazing drop onto skis. Yeah, it's funny. We didn't have the crowd mic'd up the way we liked, I don't think. But you can still hear the crowd coming through screaming when that happens, like just all the people watching on stage. So yeah, at this point it's full advantage. We're watching the pocket soldier. There's a sack in from Jay. We watch KotH clean him up. Good swap. At this point, this is a good step. Yeah, in hindsight, that was a bad third person to take. If we were going to take that third person cam, I would have wanted to take that lower. I think we just set that up too late. Alright, so I think we watched a round of each game. I think that's I think I kind of got the points across I wanted to about each grand final. So oh, I'm sorry, I missed your chat. But yeah, it was probably a little too big. I think I can agree with that. I still like it as an option, personally. I think in that specific scenario it was used well. But yeah, I think that's all I really had planned on going over today. I don't think that anybody is. Yeah, that is actually probably a good use for it. But yeah, I think that's most of the thoughts I wanted to share on observing. Oh yeah, that'd actually be a good use of that. I'm sorry I'm just sitting here staring at chat. At this point, I was just going to answer any questions people had. So I don't know what people entails. I know we've fluctuated between, having no people watching and up to 10, I think. So I'll wait a little bit and see if anybody ends up throwing questions in the chat. But otherwise, I think I might just end it. But yeah, I will end up throwing a link to this document in the TFTV thread, and I suppose on Twitter, so that way people can get the hyperlinks to all these. So that way, if anybody ends up watching this in the future as a video, they can work through all of the tutorial setup that we went through, as well as go through all that. But yeah, I think I'm gonna end it there then. Thank y'all for tuning in. I hope I educated some of you folks and set you up with the right tools to begin your observing career, TM. If you have any questions, I am pretty much always available on Discord, Connie, #0420. And yeah, thank you for tuning in.